Welcome to The What Now with Jeff Weber. My guests come from all corners of the music business and the entertainment business as we examine careers and perspectives from the inside out. To have a career in our business takes a lot more than simply being amazing at what you do. And with the world and our business being in such a swirling cyclone of trepidation, uncertainty, and outright speculation, we try to answer the question on all of our minds: what now? Today, I am exceedingly delighted to welcome Ken Stewart to our little podcast. Let me tell you a little bit about Ken, because although you may not know Ken, you know Ken. Here's why. Film and TV producer and director Ken Stewart created Coca Cola's enduring animated polar bear campaign. Now think about that for a minute. You know what I'm talking about. When asked to develop an innovative commercial for Coca Cola, creator Ken Stewart thought about drinking Coke at the movies. As a puppy, Mr. Stewart's Labrador retriever had resembled a polar bear. Mr. Stewart saw his dog, thought about polar bears and how they would go to the movies, and the idea for Northern Lights was born. In the commercial, the polar bears watch the aurora borealis and drink from bottles of Coca Cola. It would not be an exaggeration to say the rest is history. Somehow, Ken also spent time as Senior Vice President, Director of Creative Advertising for Columbia Pictures, as well as Vice President, Creative Services for Paramount Pictures. And most recently, Ken has become a highly celebrated documentary filmmaker and is currently working on an amazing documentary called The Port Chicago Incident. Welcome, Ken. And before I embarrass you immensely, I want to tell you how much I admire your career, and I appreciate you coming on the show today and lying to us all for at least 25 minutes.
Well, that's how my career was born, Jeff.
One fabrication after another.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I want to find out. I'm going to kind of work backwards in a little bit, but I want to talk about the Port Chicago incident because it is so timely and has such a dramatic impact, especially given what's going on right now. Can you just tell us what the Port Chicago incident was for people who have no idea what that is even?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. It is the tipping point for the desegregation of the United States military, which happened in 1945. And it takes place in, believe it or not, Port Chicago, California, not Port Chicago, Illinois. And it revolves around the fact that 50 African-American sailors were actually court-martialed, the largest U.S. naval court-martial in history, because they refused to load ships after an immense explosion that took 320 lives of their friends and their sailor friends, and they refused to load ammunition until it was cleared up.
So let me get this straight. In Port Chicago, California, there's a pier, and ships come to dock at that pier, and ammunition and explosive bombs and other devices are loaded on to those ships. And the Navy, in their infinite wisdom, had decided that only black sailors would load the ammunition and the bombs on those ships.
Yes.
And they told them not to worry because there's no devices, no detonators, but they lied.
Right. Well, we don't know if they lied or if they just did not know. That's the truth. Oddly enough, the Navy itself didn't really know how to load ammunition properly. In fact, the U.S. Coast Guard offered to teach them how to do it. And they were there for a while, and the Navy, being the Navy, said, we don't need you guys anymore. And they and they departed. But yes, they kept telling all the African American sailors they could either be stewards, they could be cooks, they could do very menial jobs. One of those menial jobs was loading ammunition onto ships. They had white officers, but it was African Americans who loaded ships. And these guys were concerned about that from day one. They got no training whatsoever. They sort of made their way through this whole, mess, if you will. And one day, unfortunately, their worst fears came true, and 2 ships exploded.
And so, okay, so this is what's the most amazing thing to me. So after all of this happened, then the Navy, after, if there is such a thing as settling down, after, all the 300 people died and the 420 people were injured, the Navy said, we're moving to another kind of port, so we want you guys to go back and kind of load ammunition again. And 50 black sailors said, listen, this may not be the best career move for us, given your track record. Is there a possibility that we could do anything else? And
yeah, I'm sorry, but that's essentially how it went down, to be honest with you. They said, look, we'll do anything else. And initially it was 258. It was, I think, 4 divisions of guys who were shifted from Port Chicago to Vallejo, and from Vallejo they would go to Mare Island to load ammunition onto other ships, and so they'd wake up in the morning on Vallejo barracks, and they would hear either column left or column right. If they heard column right, that meant they were going to stay on the base and do whatever they did around the base. If they heard column left, they knew they were going to get onto a ferry, go to Mare Island, and start loading ammunition. Now, keep in mind, same officers that they had before the explosion were going to command them at Mare Island. Nothing had been done to teach them new techniques or to find out exactly what happened. And then one day they got this, column left instead of column right. And all 258 guys said, no. And so the Admiral Wright,
really
came out and said, in his little Jeep with Marines and guns, and said, you guys get on the field here. We're going to talk about this. And the conversation was something like, this is a time of war. And if you do not do what I'm ordering you to do, which is to load ammunition, I could have you shot. In fact, I'm thinking about having you shot. Now, how many of you would like to go back to work? So literally 202 sailors stepped forward and said, we'll go back to work. And 48 remained behind, stood fast. 2 others were added later on from the infirmary, believe it or not, because they did not report for loading ammunition, because they were, first of all, they never loaded ammunition, and secondly, they had broken arms. But they were charged with mutiny as well. So, listen, I mean, here's the deal. Somebody was going to be blamed for this explosion. It wasn't going to be the Navy.
It wasn't the Navy. This is classic. I don't even understand the logic of it. But when I read that and when I saw that in your film, I thought, well, if the Navy is not responsible, well then, what? Well, the Air Force.
I think we know who's responsible, Jeff. It's that African American ammunition loader and his pals. The trial took place. It lasted about 6 weeks. At the end of that, the adjutants and the JAG officers who were trying the case, they all went to lunch. They came back 80 minutes later, and they literally went through the list: guilty, 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 all the way down the line. And it was such a horrendous process, if you will, that you remember Thurgood Marshall?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Thurgood Marshall was back in New York. He was the head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. since he wasn't in the Navy, obviously he couldn't do anything. But what he could do is he could raise a hue and a cry, and he did. And he applied with some social pressure to have that case reviewed and the sentences reviewed. The sentences, by the way, were 15 to 18 years
Right.
for
In
each
jail.
of these guys.
Gosh.
And these guys were kids that were they weren't even out of high school, most of them. You know, 7th grade education, 8th grade education, came from the poor states of the South. And
But they knew how to load bombs.
well, they actually taught themselves.
Great.
Yeah. So considering that there was only one explosion,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
I'd say
considering
they
only
did pretty damn well.
only 300 people died,
Hmm.
and 400 people were injured. That's a pretty
Yeah.
good track record.
I think these guys are heroes. Anyway, because of that, I won't tell you everything because it would take an hour. But
Well,
because of that, oh, sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, sorry for interrupting, but I, this is obviously captivating and timely at the same time. But how did you discover the idea enough to want to do this by yourself for 4 years? How did you discover this? And is that the definition of a documentary filmmaker? And what is the matter with you?
Many have asked, and there has not yet been an answer. I was working on another documentary in the same area, about 10 miles south of Port Chicago. And somewhere in my research, I came across this event, and it really captivated me. In fact, it captivated me so much that I actually tried to put about 4 minutes of the event into the documentary I was working on at the time. When I saw that it really did not fit, I said, okay, that's a whole subject in and of itself. And so after I got done with my first documentary, I went back and I said, this is where I'm going to start here. And I just picked it up because even though it's such a historic moment, there's very, very little historical data or papers written on this subject. There are some. You can find some stuff on the internet, but it's really, considering it was the tipping point for the desegregation of the Navy, which then led to the desegregation of all the other branches of the military, it's pretty phenomenal that not many people know about it.
That is so true. I mean, I certainly didn't learn about it in school. I didn't
didn't
know
either.
anything about it. Most of the friends in our business had not heard about it, and interestingly enough, I was honored to be the music supervisor on this. And when we talked to asking people to create music for it, they felt that it was an important movie to be a part of, important documentary to be a part of. They wanted to be contributors and they wanted to help. Because you've done this all by yourself, using your own money, your own energy, your own time, and your own lunacy. Oh, well.
And I'm a white guy. So there you go.
And you're a white guy. What is your
What does that have to do with anything right now? Well, it's interesting. It is, if you will, in the parlance of our day, it's a black story. It's not, it's unusual for, I think, a person of my color to be telling this story when it's such an important part of the black community's history. But doesn't matter. I did it.
No, I think it's phenomenal that you did it by yourself and that you had the courage to spend that much time and all your resources doing it. The role of a documentary filmmaker is slightly different from the roles that you've had both in advertising and in the film world. Did you? I don't know if you really decided, okay, I'm going to do documentaries. You just kind of were riveted by stories, as you said, that needed to be told, and you decided, okay, I can do this.
What I love about documentary filmmaking is that when you're in the studio system, as you're aware of this, you have to get a green light from everybody. before you can begin anything. And
Right.
I mean, because you're using other people's money. So obviously all that control reverts to somebody else. And I did try and get people interested in my first documentary, but it just wasn't happening for whatever the reasons were. So I said, I'm tired of waiting.
Mm.
I'm just going to tell a story. I'm going to learn how to tell stories on my own. And interesting enough, really the most inexpensive way to do that is to buy your own camera, get your
Right.
own lights, and write your own stuff and go out and discover the story and then put it together. So that's really what I did. It was more about A, the story, and then B, not waiting for somebody to say, yes, okay, go ahead.
Well, the other thing is that you went there, you talked to people, you
Mhm.
interviewed people, you spent so much time creating the narrative that it's phenomenal. This documentary, I can only imagine how much you didn't use, and you were at the mercy of the elements. You were at the mercy of people who didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
You
mostly.
had, it wasn't one of those documentaries where the story was being begged to be told to you, but this was a story that you actually, like a dentist, had to pry out of people almost.
Yeah, people were embarrassed about being mutinied. There are no, I couldn't find any surviving members of the actual guys who were mutinied. I did find some audio interviews. Thankfully, uh, a woman historian did some work and allowed me to use her audio interviews. But even the Navy, when I approached the Navy and said I'd love to get a transcript of the trial, since it's the largest trial in court martial in your history, and I was told they didn't have one. So
they
we
didn't have
start from
one.
there.
They didn't have one for you.
Yeah, they didn't have one for me. And they weren't going to, whatever they had, they weren't giving it to me. But lo and behold, Bancroft Library out of out of Berkeley University, one day, 6 months later, 8 months later, wrote me an email and said, there's a box we found, two boxes. We found two boxes over on Treasure Island. And I went, oh, Treasure Island.
Treasure
That's where they
Island.
held. That's where they held the trial. Maybe this is my treasure. And they said, would you like to come up and look through the boxes? And I said, well, you could do me a favor so I don't have to drive 800 miles and just look in the boxes for me and tell me what you find. And so they did. And they wrote me back and they said, well, guess what? We have a copy of the trial transcript. We don't know how we got it. We don't know why it's there, but we have it. And normally, if we have a copy, we normally also have the original, but we don't have the original. So I immediately said, I will pay you to have somebody digitize 1,600 pages of trial transcript. Okay. And send me those files, baby.
Good thing you won the lottery, but are not telling anybody.
Well, you know what? It helped me. And now Berkeley has a
A
digital
digital
copy
copy.
of the trial.
Yeah. For scholars or anybody else who wants to really do the research.
Yes.
Well,
So the research is there available
let me
for
just
anybody.
let me just back up because I think that I want to talk about you as a documentary filmmaker. The way you select your subjects is interesting because a documentary filmmaker has to be essentially struck by a story, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean, so much so that it captivates you that you really believe that you need to tell that story, correct?
Yeah, I think the yes, you're right. You have to have a passion for it. Now, obviously, it's a bit like a marriage because some days you're extremely passionate about it, and some days, forgive me, you're exhausted by it. You're tired from it. You don't have anybody whispering in your ear sweet things that are giving you any positive feedback. What you have ahead of you is just more struggle. And so, you question yourself a fair amount, and you question why you're on this road, and will anybody be interested in it when you're done? And you never have those answers until you're done.
When you're doing the documentary, you in a weird way, you're hearing music. You're hearing what in a perfect world you would like to accentuate the drama, accentuate the emotional impact. This is stuff that you hear, and the process. How did you go about just selecting the original temp tracks, if you will, for the project?
You mean the stuff I borrowed and then came to you on my knees and said, Jeff, please help me? And you kindly
Okay.
did that? Is that what you
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I've always had an ear for soundtracks because I just love them.
Right.
Um, and I know how important music is to any film. And so I always have an ear to it. And because I'm a member of the Academy and I review a lot of films during the year, uh, music is such a huge part of it. I get to know these films, and so I keep an ear out for the films during the various years that sort of strike my fancy and create a mood. And I remember those moods, and I remember that music or those music cues that were attached to it, the soundtrack that was attached to it, and I go back to them and I extricate little pieces and put them into try and lay them
Right.
against the picture when I'm done, and
Right.
see if it doesn't help enhance it, bring it to life, and then I come to a real professional, aka Jeff Weber, and say, Jeff,
Such a silly mistake.
please help me.
Well,
And you did.
well, that's because we're friends, and friendship is better than horseshit. You know that.
Yes,
Um,
I do, but not everybody, not
but
all your friends in this business help you. So
but it's really interesting because the people that I approached saw this in the same vein that I did. That it's an important project to be a part of. It's an important project that must be told. Uh, and like you say, there's a small scattering of other information about it and other projects about it. But I found, in asking people about it, there was an eagerness to be involved, to be associated, to want to do it, and it's really rare because everybody always, a lot of people in our business always have their hands out, and they're happy to do it as long as you grease the palm and do whatever. But we didn't really experience that. We felt like, oh, this needs, and we need to be there for this. And I felt great about that. And I think we ended up with some amazing original music specifically for this project. And
you
I'm
did.
really, I'm
We did.
really, I'm very proud of being affiliated with it. So now the process from this point on is, you're almost done with it. What happens now? I mean, here's the reason why I'm asking that is because,
Yeah.
everything about the entertainment business, our business, your business, is kind of gone,
Yeah.
to a certain extent. So, as a filmmaker and as a creative person, uh, I'm wondering and I'm concerned about where we go from here. How do we develop the Ken Stewart brand? How do we, where do we go from here? Or as I, often say, what now, Ken? What now?
Hmm. What now, my love? Um, I it's a great question, Jeff, and it's unfortunately it has many answers.
Right.
I think it's however creative you can be as a human being is the answer. Um, I use aggregators, or I did on my first one. I used aggregators, which are companies that go to Amazon and Netflix and iTunes and Google Play and go with a little basket of films. You pay them to do this, but they
Mm,
go to these entities, well, let's say once every month, or maybe even once every 2 months, and those companies will look into the basket and go, I like that. That's good. We could use
mm,
that. We'll put that on the air. But you pay for that privilege.
mm,
And then what happens is you wait. You're always 3 to 6 months behind. If people are viewing your film on any of those platforms, you're about 30 days behind to 60 days behind.
mm,
And I will tell you, it's difficult to be heard among all the chatter. There's so much more. Yes, there are more platforms out there for people, but there's a lot more stuff to choose from. So how do you break through all that clutter? That's always been the tough part. When I did work for Coca Cola, Coca Cola had the money to buy their way through the clutter,
Right.
right? As
So,
most big
are,
companies can.
how are you? I mean, obviously, we can't rely on anybody but ourselves for the most part at this time. So,
Right.
how are you seeing yourself as a brand, as a filmmaker, the Ken Stewart brand? I mean, how are you? Are you looking to kind of pursue more social media outlets? Are you looking to kind of you know take the film
Sponsorships would be,
sponsorships, and are you
yeah.
looking for film festival type of visibility, things to get the word out about you as a creator?
Good question. Uh, I'm I don't know that I'm right, but my feeling about film festivals is they cost a lot of money, and if you're lucky enough to win or place in the top whatever 5 or something, and you get their little stamps on your film, I guess that makes a difference to somebody. I don't know that it does. I mean, it's almost, do we see? It's interesting. Do we see films now because they were voted Best Picture of the Year? Still,
Hmm.
I think I think so, but but less so, but
What if we
less
make
so.
up? What if we make up our own stamp and have our own
I
film festival? You know what I
I
mean?
want that, Jeff. I
In our
have one right
bedroom,
here. I,
right?
I have one right here. Uh,
You can use it and put that damn
I
stamp. The
I think it's
Czechoslovakian Film Festival.
yes. Hey, you know something? A lot of people do it and get
Really?
away with it. Listen, I'm not going to tell you who, but somebody famous
The Serbian
before they.
Film Festival. You're number one, baby.
Well, listen to this. This is a great story. So, a friend of mine who is a famous director used to started off in advertising in New York City, and they had a small company, and they could afford one delivery car. So what they did though was they made up placards, that you just kind of magnetically put on cars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they would just slap these placards on all these cars going all over town, and it made the impression that wow, this company is a big successful company.
So
So I think
every
in a
employee
weird
had to
way you
put
got it.
those placards on the car. Every
Yeah,
employee had to. I get it.
yeah, pretty much. I
I,
guess
I
they
love
probably only
that.
had 4 employees, but there's resourcefulness, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we have to do again today in your business, which you know all too well. That's gone through. I mean, that's the business that got hit first, uh,
Right.
uh, and so you guys really got nailed. And it's just tough to make a living at what you really want to do and what you really are entitled to get a fair wage for. Um,
Well, let me ask
People
you
always
this.
say, "Yeah, sorry."
Oh no, no, no. People always say what?
Well, it's interesting. People always say content is king. Content is king.
Hmm.
But you create the content very often and you have no leverage. So what kind of king is that?
So, if you create amazing content, do you think that entitles you to do other amazing content?
Entitle's a funny word.
Right.
I think it leads to doing other work.
Subject
Or
to the
can
visibility of that product. Yeah.
exactly, and that's of course what we're talking about is how do you make this visible? And I think for me, I will have a premiere, if you will, on online. Invite some people, maybe some people who have influence within the community, the African American community, the film community, and see if I can generate word of mouth. Just start
Mm.
generating word of mouth and see where that takes us.
So, ideally, how does someone find this film? Will they be able to go to like what Vimeo, Hulu? Where do they? I mean, where do they? How do
Yeah,
they?
I mean, I can have it on Vimeo right away for sure. And then what I'll probably do is do what I did before, which is get it on Amazon if I can, get it on Netflix if I can, get it on Amazon Prime if I can.
Would you consider doing a crowdfunding campaign just for marketing dollars?
I consider it. I don't, from what I've read and heard, and I may be wrong about this, they sometimes when you do those crowdfunding things for your film or whatever, they come with certain obligations, T-shirts, whatever. We'll
Yeah, you have
fly
to
you
go
out to the
over and
set.
you have to make dinner for the guy that puts in 5K.
Right. Right. And you have to chat with his wife for 2 hours and
Who knew
make
you were?
yourself funny.
Who knew you knew how to do lasagna?
Right, exactly. So you have obligations. Now, when you take it to a large corporations don't like things that have obligations attached.
Right.
So
Yes.
the cleaner you can make this, if let's just say I got a great review from somebody who screened it on NPR, and all of a sudden people are asking for it and so forth and so on. Well, then a Netflix or whoever, they're going to be more interested in possibly picking you up, if you will, and
Right.
distributing it. I
Well,
would like them to come in earlier in the process because, as you well know, money is helpful.
well, it helps you do certain things that you may not have full resources to do.
Right,
And
right.
I understand that. Uh, I guess then the question is, okay, so once the film is done and out there, how do you get that word of mouth? How do you advertising? How do you create that brand? And I think that's the question for today because of what's happening. And by the way, who cares?
Yeah,
Right? I mean, yeah.
yeah,
So you did. Who cares? Maybe you
yeah.
get a leg up because of the time. I don't know, but
Uh, I think what now? What now is a
yeah,
great is a great title for a show, because I think all of us are trying to figure that out.
yeah. No, I.
Still be creative and still do the things we love to do, and think we're pretty good at it. Maybe not the greatest, but we're pretty good at it. Uh, it's just it's like there's no apprenticeship anymore.
Oh,
Where you,
it's
yeah.
difficult. Yeah, I'm.
I mean, do you find that to be true in
Well,
music?
the record business doesn't have any more development. It's
Right.
instant gratification takes too long, and
That's great.
right.
That's great. That's
And
fabulous.
so
Yeah.
that's what it is, and major record companies are signing artists who already have huge followings in every aspect of social media. And so my position, of course, is, well, if you have huge followings, what the hell do you need a major label for? They're just going to screw you in every way humanly possible. And
Yes.
at the same
Yeah.
time, telling you how amazing you
Well,
are.
it's so interesting that you say that, because I'm caught in that same dilemma. Because, okay, great, I get on Amazon. So do you want me to tell you what Amazon actually gives the filmmaker when
Okay.
you rent it for viewing, stream it?
Okay.
Amazon will give you 6 cents
What?
for every
So if
six
I'm
cents for every hour. So my first feature was 44 minutes long, which means for me to really hit the threshold, two people have to watch it for me to get 6 cents.
right,
Hey, welcome. It's why I drink, Jeff. It's why I drink.
oh, I love what we do.
And now the new contract states that they can actually go down to 3 cents an hour
That's because you
if
guys are
you
worthless
don't.
pieces of.
If you don't have the viewership, meaning if your film isn't getting viewed whatever number of times per month it needs to be viewed, in their opinion, you're down to 3 cents an hour.
All right, Ken. So I'm expecting after this one, you're going to jump right into the next one because it's so damn lucrative.
You know what? It's all about the love, my brother.
I
It's all
know.
about the love.
And that's what makes you amazing, because if you thought about the compensation component, you'd probably, have pencils
Yeah.
poking through your eyeballs by now.
Yeah. Yeah, I would.
But
I'm sitting on them right now.
I listen. I I love you, and I love
love you
what you're
too, Jeff.
doing, and you must continue. We will be there. The music people
Thank
will
you.
be there for you, and
Thank you, brother.
you make important stories, We need important stories. You come from this from a passionate perspective. Filmmakers need to come from a passionate perspective. I will always be vice president of your fan club. And, again, thanks for your time.
I love you. Thanks for having me on, Jeff. It's great to talk to you as always.
All right. I'm going out to buy the video version of that and overspend dramatically.
Please do.
Thank you.
My wife will love you for it.
I don't know if mine will, but
thanks, Jeff. You've been great. You're always great. I love you, man. You're the best there is.
Love you too, buddy. We will talk
Thanks,
soon.
Man.
Thanks again for your time. I'm super happy to be involved in this project. It means so much to me.
I'm so happy you're involved. Believe me. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, bud. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Ciao.